I found out about the book the same way everyone else did. My coworker Sarah walked into the break room holding a copy. And there was my sister's face smiling back at me from the cover. Oh my God, Marissa. Isn't this your sister? I had no idea she was a writer. This book is everywhere right now. My stomach dropped. Claire had mentioned she was working on something, but she'd been vague about it. Said it was just some personal writing, nothing serious. But here it was. A real book with her name on it. And Sarah was telling me it was already a bestseller. What's it about? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. It's a memoir about growing up with a mentally ill sibling. Really powerful stuff. She talks about how her sister was abusive and unstable, and how she had to basically raise herself. It's heartbreaking. The room started spinning. Mentally ill sibling, abusive, unstable. Sarah kept talking, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could think was that Claire had written a book about our childhood, about me, and she hadn't even told me. I bought a copy on my lunch break. My hands were shaking as I sat in my car and opened it. The dedication read, "For everyone who survived a difficult family, you are not alone." I started reading, and with every page, I felt like I was being punched in the stomach. Claire had changed my name to Miranda, but everything else was there. Our house on Maple Street in Portland, our parents' names, the scar on my knee from when I fell off my bike when I was 7. She'd written about that scar, actually, claiming I'd gotten it during one of my violent episodes, when I threw myself down the stairs for attention. That's not what happened. I fell off my bike trying to keep up with her and her friends. She was the one who helped me inside and cleaned up my knee. She was the one who told me I was brave for not crying. But in her book, I was this monster child who hurt myself to manipulate our parents. Page after page, she painted me as this unstable, jealous sister who made her life hell. She wrote about how I would steal her things, destroy her homework, and scream at her for hours. She described living in constant fear of my episodes, and how our parents were too overwhelmed to protect her. None of it was true. None of it. Yes, I had struggled as a kid. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 8, and I did have trouble controlling my emotions sometimes, but I was never violent. I never hurt Claire. If anything, I worshipped her. She was 3 years older, and I followed her around like a lost puppy, desperate for her attention and approval. The worst part was how she described our parents. In her version, they were these helpless victims who didn't know how to handle me. She wrote about how they would lock themselves in their bedroom when I had meltdowns, and how they eventually gave up trying to discipline me. She made it sound like I was some kind of feral child who destroyed our family. But that's not how I remember it at all. Our parents were loving but overwhelmed. Dad worked 2 jobs, and Mom was going back to school. When I acted out, they tried their best to help me. They got me into therapy. They worked with my teachers. They never gave up on me, and they certainly never locked themselves away from me. I called Claire that night. My hands were shaking as I dialed her number. "Marissa, did you see? The book is doing so well. I can't believe it." "Claire, we need to talk." I know. I should have told you I was writing it. I just wasn't sure it would ever get published, and I didn't want to make a big deal out of nothing. You wrote about me. You wrote about our family, and none of it is true." There was a long pause. "Marissa, I know this might be hard for you to read. I tried to be as gentle as possible, but I had to tell my truth." "Your truth, Claire? You said I threw myself down the stairs. You said I destroyed your homework. You said I was violent. None of that happened. That's how I remember it. How you remember it? We lived in the same house. We had the same childhood. How can you remember it so differently? Look, I know you probably don't remember everything clearly. You were going through a lot back then. But I lived through it too, and this is my story to tell." I felt like I was going crazy. Was I remembering everything wrong? Had I really been that bad? But no, I knew what had happened. I remembered Claire helping me with my homework when I struggled. I remembered her defending me when kids at school made fun of me for being different. I remembered her teaching me how to braid my hair and letting me sleep in her room when I had nightmares. Claire, you helped me. You were my protector. You taught me how to manage my emotions. You never acted like you were afraid of me. I was a child, Marissa. I did what I had to do to survive. Just because I was kind to you sometimes doesn't mean you weren't difficult. Difficult. That word hit me like a slap. Yes, I had been difficult. I knew that. But I wasn't the monster she'd described in her book. Why didn't you tell me you were writing this? Why didn't you ask me about any of it? Because I knew you'd try to stop me, and I have a right to tell my story. After we hung up, I sat on my couch and cried for hours. I felt like my entire childhood had been rewritten, like someone had taken my memories and twisted them into something ugly and unrecognizable. The next few weeks were torture. The book was everywhere. I saw it in grocery stores, in airport bookshops, on social media. People were sharing quotes from it, praising Claire for her bravery in speaking out about mental illness in families. She was doing interviews on podcasts and morning shows, talking about how hard it was to grow up with an unstable sibling. I watched one of her interviews online. The host asked her about forgiveness, and Claire said, "I've had to learn to forgive my sister for the trauma she caused. She couldn't help being sick, but that doesn't erase the impact it had on me." Trauma she caused. Sick. I turned off the video and threw my laptop across the room. My phone started ringing constantly. Friends and family members who had read the book were calling to check on me. Some were supportive, saying they couldn't believe Claire had written about me without permission. But others seemed to believe her version of events. My Aunt Linda called and said, "Honey, I always knew you had a hard time as a kid, but I didn't realize how much it affected Claire. Maybe you should think about reaching out to her." Reaching out to her, I was the one who had been betrayed. I was the one whose childhood had been turned into a best-selling lie. The worst call came from my mom. She was crying before she even said hello. "Marissa, I just finished reading Claire's book. I don't understand. Did we fail you that badly? Did we really not protect her?" "Mom, it's not true. You and Dad were great parents. You helped me so much." But Claire seems so sure about everything. She remembers things I don't even remember. Maybe I blocked them out because they were too painful. That's when I realized what Claire had done. She hadn't just rewritten my story. She'd rewritten our entire family's story. She'd made our parents question their own memories, their own parenting. She'd made them feel guilty for things that never happened. I started keeping a journal, writing down every memory I could think of from our childhood. I called my old therapist, Dr. Martinez, who I'd seen from ages 8 to 12. She couldn't share specific details from our sessions, but she did say, "Marissa, you were never violent. You were a sensitive child who needed extra support, but you were never dangerous or abusive." That helped, but it didn't stop the book from spreading. Claire was invited to speak at conferences about sibling trauma. She started a blog about healing from family dysfunction. She was becoming famous for surviving me. 6 months after the book came out, Claire called me. She was coming to Portland for a book signing and wanted to have dinner. "I think it would be good for us to talk in person," she said. "I know this has been hard for you. Hard for me. Like I was the one who had done something wrong." We met at a restaurant downtown. Claire looked different, more polished. She was wearing expensive clothes and had gotten her hair done professionally. Success suited her. "You look good," she said when she saw me. "I'm glad you're doing well." "Am I? Because according to your book, I'm a mentally ill person who traumatized you for years. How exactly am I supposed to be doing well?" "Marissa, I never said you were a bad person. I said you were sick. There's a difference. You said I was violent. You said I destroyed your things. You said our parents were afraid of me. None of that is true." Claire sighed. "Look, I know you see things differently, but this is how I experienced our childhood. I'm not saying you meant to hurt me, but you did. Your behavior affected me in ways you probably don't realize." "What behavior? Give me one specific example of something I did that was so terrible." She was quiet for a long moment. "You don't remember the time you cut up my prom dress?" I stared at her. "What? I never cut up your prom dress. I helped you pick it out. I was so excited that you were going to prom. You were jealous that I was going and you weren't old enough. You snuck into my room and cut it up with scissors." "Claire, that never happened. Your dress was fine. You wore it to prom. I have pictures of you in it. Those were from after Mom bought me a replacement dress." I felt like I was losing my mind. Why would I remember helping you get ready for prom if I had destroyed your dress? Why would you have let me help you if I had done that? Because you felt guilty. You were trying to make up for what you'd done. This was insane. She had an answer for everything. A way to twist every memory to fit her narrative. If I was nice to her, it was because I felt guilty for being mean. If I didn't remember being mean, it was because I had blocked it out. There was no way to argue with someone who had rewritten history so completely. Claire, I need you to tell me the truth. Did any of the things in your book actually happen? She looked me straight in the eye. Every word of that book is true, but something in her expression flickered. Just for a second, I saw something that looked like guilt or uncertainty, and that's when I realized what had really happened. Claire had always been the golden child. She was older, more mature, more successful in school. Our parents were proud of her, and she never caused any trouble, but she also never got much attention because I was the one who needed help. I was the one in therapy, the one with special accommodations at school, the one our parents worried about. She had been jealous, not the other way around. She had watched me get all the attention, even if it was negative attention, and she had resented it. And now, as an adult, she had found a way to make herself the center of the story. She had turned our childhood into a tragedy where she was the hero and I was the villain. The book wasn't about what I had done to her, it was about what she wished I had done to her, so she could finally be the victim, the survivor, the one who deserved sympathy and attention. You know what's funny, I said. In all your interviews, you talk about forgiveness. You say you've forgiven me for traumatizing you, but you never once reached out to me before writing this book. You never tried to have a conversation about our childhood or how it affected you. You just decided to publish your version of events and let me find out about it from a coworker. I didn't think you'd understand. Or maybe you knew I'd tell you the truth, and you didn't want to hear it. Claire's face hardened. You can believe whatever you want, Marissa, but I'm not going to apologize for telling my story. Your story, right? Not our story, not the truth. Your story. I left the restaurant that night feeling strangely calm. For months, I had been questioning myself, wondering if I was crazy, if my memories were wrong. But sitting across from Claire, seeing the way she couldn't look me in the eye when she talked about specific incidents, I knew I wasn't the one who was lying. A year later, I was at a coffee shop when I overheard two women talking about Claire's book. One of them said, "I loved it, but something about it felt off to me. Like if her sister was really that bad, why didn't she have any specific examples? It was all very vague." The other woman nodded. "And did you notice she never mentioned trying to get her sister help as an adult? Like, if someone had traumatized me that much, I think I'd want them to get therapy or something. But she just talks about cutting contact and moving on." I wanted to turn around and tell them they were right to be suspicious. I wanted to tell them that the sister in the book wasn't a monster, just a kid who needed extra help. But I didn't. I just sat there and felt vindicated. Claire's book is still out there. People still read it and believe her version of our childhood. She still gives interviews and writes blog posts about healing from family trauma, and I've learned to live with that. But I know the truth. I know that I wasn't perfect as a kid, but I wasn't the villain she made me out to be. I know that our parents loved us both and did their best. I know that Claire helped me more than she hurt me, which makes her betrayal even more painful. The hardest part isn't that she lied about me, it's that she threw away our real relationship for a fake story that would sell books. She had a sister who loved her, who looked up to her, who would have done anything for her, and she traded that for fame and sympathy from strangers. I think about that sometimes. When I see her book in stores, or when someone mentions her name. She got what she wanted. She's successful now, known for her bravery and resilience. But she lost the one person who knew her before she was famous, who loved her when she was just Claire, not Claire the survivor. And maybe that's justice enough.